Good morning. I want to welcome everybody to the World Economic Forum panel on energy transformation. A warm welcome to everybody here in the room in Davos and to everybody who's watching this discussion on the web. Our subject is the energy transformation, and it's certainly a very topical time to do that. A month ago, the Paris conference on climate change came out with a historic consensus involving almost 200 countries to move quickly to an energy transformation. It comes at a time when solar prices have dropped dramatically. They're way down, but oil prices are really way down. So this provides the context and the challenge, of course, of moving energy transformation, a change in the energy system. The numbers demonstrate what a challenge it is. Today, 80% of world energy, more or less, comes from oil, coal, and natural gas, 1.1% from wind and solar. So a transformation is a very big job, and our discussion this morning is aimed at trying to understand what's involved in that transformation, what's happened, and what can happen. We have a terrific panel to join us in the discussion. Fatih Birol, who is the Executive Director of the International Energy Agency, enormously experienced in these questions. Mr. Hiroaki Nakanishi, who is the Chairman and CEO of Hitachi. Eric Lin Lu, who's the CEO of Shengfen International Clean Energy, at the very forefront of solar and solar technology and development. And of course, Ignacio Sanchez Galan, the Chairman and CEO of Iberdrola, which is the world's largest operator of wind, and in Europe, in North America, in Latin America, and brings experience in that sector, renewables really going back to 2001. And really going back to the foundation of your company 120 years or so ago when it started with hydropower. So we have a lot to cover. We will have a discussion among ourselves, and then we'll open up to the audience and bring you into the discussion. But we have to start with Fatih Birol. Oil, what's happening? And then the second question, after you tell us what's happening, I think we heard the phrase awash in a supply of oil. What do these low oil prices mean and natural gas prices mean for renewable development that might be different than a year ago? Fatih.
Thank you very much, Dan, and good morning to everybody. Yes, we are seeing a downward pressure on the oil prices. And it seems that 2016, this downward pressure will likely to continue. Why? Very simple. Since 3 years, we have more supply than the demand. So we have a lot of oil in the markets. And when we look at the 2016, I don't see any factors which could make a big surprise and push the prices up. So this has a few implications. And if I can choose two of them, one on the oil markets, the second on the topic of this discussion, the transformation of energy. For the oil markets, what worries me the most is that last year, we have seen oil investments, 2015, to decline more than 20% compared to 2014 for the new projects. And this was the largest drop we have ever seen in the history of oil. And moreover, 2016, this year, with a $30 price environment, we expect an additional 16% decline in the oil projects, oil investments. So we have never seen 2 years in a row oil investments declining. If there was a decline 1 year, which was very rare, the next year there was a rebound.
So what does that lead you to?
This leads me to the very fact that in a few years of time, when the global demand gets a bit stronger, when we see that the high-cost areas, such as the United States, starts to decline, we may well see an upward pressure on the prices as a result of market tightening. So my message, the first message is, don't be misled that the low oil prices, they will have an impact on the investments, therefore, in the oil markets in the few years of time.
Just to put a number on that, in our numbers at IHS, 2015 to 2020, we see now a $1.8 trillion decline in upstream oil and gas investment. But let's turn it now. What does this mean for the energy transformation? What does it mean for Paris?
So when we talk about the energy transition in Paris, there are many factors, but two of them are important. One, renewable energy. The other one is energy efficiency. So both, especially on the energy efficiency, we have seen major improvements in the last few years. But to be very frank, a big chunk of this energy efficiency policies were not necessarily driven by the environmental factors. They did play a role, but more to save money, to save cost of energy. Therefore, the high energy prices gave an impetus to energy efficiency improvements. And what I'm scared is that with the low oil prices, low energy prices, that push on energy efficiency may not be as strong as we have seen in the last few years of time. Therefore, a warning to the governments, don't get too relaxed, continue to push the energy efficiency button, including the transportation sector, buildings and the others. And for renewables, the life will not be very easy, to be honest with you, with the low oil and low natural gas prices, because the gas prices are also very low today. When you look at the Asia Pacific, it was $20 2 years ago. It is less than $6 now. So gas and renewables are in competition. If we want to see renewables to have a real share in the global energy mix, we need to continue the renewable projects, especially those which makes economic sense.
So let me ask you, Mr. Galan, low oil prices, low natural gas prices, governments pulling subsidies back from renewables. What does that mean for your renewable business?
Well, I think our investment is already, when we take a decision, we are thinking in 40, 50, 60 years' time. I think the importance of the COP21 is then finally the worldwide has already recognized that the problem exists. Fatih and myself, we have already talked about that very many times. So the world recognized then the problem exists and they have to make solution. And the main solution is that we need to electrify more the economy. I think one of the agreements or the things or the point that has been agreed in Paris is that even in the electricity sector, it's only responsible of 28% of the emission. But we have technologies for improving dramatically the emission we are making today. We can move from coal to gas, or from gas to wind, or from wind to solar. And I think that the emission can already reduce by half, by 3 times, and even we can already achieve a moment the no.
Do these lower prices really matter to you?
Well, I think when we make our profile, we are not thinking in the short term. I think 2 years, 3 years for an industry, the life of our asset is 40, 50, 60 years. I think we have power plants has been built by grandparent in 1903, which still are there.
And operating well.
And operating well. So I think we are looking long term, and I think this period certain is not helping.
So do you see other utilities now more following the path you launched in 2001?
Well, I think the investment in renewable has not reduced worldwide, has already increasing, they continue increasing. And I think there one point very simple, is if we put price to the carbon, which was the main things, I think automatically these technologies can already reduce the support which is already given today.
So do you think that's the key thing that post-Paris needs to happen, is a price on carbon?
Well, I think certain. If we are not putting price in carbon, it should be very difficult to switch from technologies, in certain cases the fossil fuels, which are today are receiving more subsidies than all renewables worldwide. The subsidies we are receiving, the fossil fuels worldwide, are twice the subsidies which are received 4 times. So
but that includes, when you say subsidies, you're including the discounted prices in countries, if you take that out.
Exactly. It is $500 billion for fossil fuels and $120 billion for renewable energies.
Right.
So if that disappears, automatically...
Well, we see a lot of the countries now backing out of their subsidies to oil in the emerging markets.
Well, I think if that is reduced and this already given a bit to renewables, or even not, it's just putting a price to carbon. That's it.
So let me just ask one other thing on subsidies before we leave the subject. As you say, you note the imbalance. What was the impact in the economic downturn of the pulling back in Spain and other countries of subsidies or incentives to renewables? Are you still seeing the effect of that?
Well, in most of the countries are already just making a trend for making the disaster disappear in the medium term. I think the technologies are already making improvements such they are becoming competitive without the support. But I insist on that one. But we need already a level playing field. Renewable cannot compete with fossil fuels when fossil fuels are subsidized. I give you the example of Spain. The national coal is subsidized. How to compete renewable with the national coal subsidized? It's impossible.
But you're doing it.
Well, we do because we had already in the past certain kind of support, but not for the new one. It's very difficult to compete.
So let's go to the cost of renewables. The really dramatic thing is, of course, is the dramatic drop in the price of solar energy. Mr. Liu, how much of this, and of course China is now the largest manufacturer, how much of this is a result of overcapacity in Chinese manufacturing? How much is technology advanced? And how much is sheer scale? Can you sort it out for us?
Dan, thank you. I think it's very difficult to quantify exactly the percentage, but I think it's a combination of the scale including manufacturing scale and also supply chain scale and supply chain efficiency, and also the technology innovation, and plus the high efficiency conversion. So as you know, the Chinese solar manufacturing, the cost-wise has dropped by over 75% for the last couple of years.
Right.
And it's continued on the track, like Mr. Bolo said. It's not just the manufacturing cost itself, but also efficiency has been beefed up dramatically. The 60-piece cell panel, when I joined the Suntech Power 5 years ago, it's only 180, 185 watt per panel, but the same cell, same square area today, average is 260. So you look at it from 185 watt per panel to 260 for the same area surface.
So do you expect to see continuing innovation?
Of course, and we had a meeting last week in China. We are seeing the 25% continued drop within the next 5 years for the solar panel, and also, which means 25% the EPC cost for the area related like land and also the systems. And on top of that, we also, the conversion efficiency is going to be high. We say it's going to be 20 to 35% higher for the next 5 decades. One of our US.
So where does solar fit into China's overall electricity mix in the future? Solar and renewables.
Solar and renewables by 2030, China has committed over 25%. That's a minimum. We see.
And where are you now?
Right now, we are at 1.5 to 2%.
So that's a lot.
Yeah,
quickly.
that's why China has defined what they call 13th, 50 years plan. I think the solar and renewable energy has become the national strategy for the focus. As we mentioned before this session, where China is going in terms of economics is a hot topic for this forum. China is not going to invest in the infrastructure, real estate related cement, the metal and the steel, but the renewable energy is a clear target.
How much of the new emphasis in China on renewables is a result of climate change discussions, and how much of it is a result of urban pollution?
I think both. I think China, the middle class has become more and more. People not just enjoy the physical rich, but they all enjoy clean air, clean soil, and clean water, right? So government has a lot of pressure from me, like an average consumers. We want everything to be clean. I think it's become probably more and more it's political, just versus the reality. Yeah.
So, Mr. Nakanishi, one of the concerns that you have is that solar and renewables grow. There's an issue of how do you manage them and integrate them into the systems. Hitachi is a great technology company. Tell us how you see that problem.
Yeah, really that's such kind of the renewables, the characteristics is really unstable, depend on the weather. And also that how to manage of the total supply is one of the key factors from the electric grid operation. So that smart grid, already we have the 10 years history, but we don't have a clear result of the efficiency improvement yet. So that we need to invest from the viewpoint of the demand side, supply side, the more the renewables integrated in one total grid operation. That is one of the points. And also that from the viewpoint of the efficiency, you already talked about that. The demand side control is a very strong weapons to making a clear, efficient operations, especially that the consumer buildings or those areas. So those two requires a more systematic approach, how to manage of the electric grid, how to making a more efficient operations, total schemes. But now each country has its own utility operation schemes, how to the adjusting of the real cost and the fares and also that some intensive scheme. Those are very much important political issues. Right now, today, this time, the World Economic Forum is focused on the fourth the industrial revolutions. That is digitizations, such a systematic approach allows us to enjoy of those kind of the efficiency improvement very dynamically. So that as a manufacturer, Hitachi really would like to contribute to this type of approach in every country, every the areas.
And do you see that, I mean, is this happening at sufficient speed to keep pace with the growth of renewables?
Right now, in Japan, we have a big challenge to increase of the renewables very dynamically. But in the case of the Japan, we have to change of the electric utility schemes, very much specialized, regional, monopolized. So the regulations, new schemes of how to compete among us, and setting up the more dynamic combination of the various energy sources. That's our target. So that will allow us, within the 5 years, the more dynamic efficiency improvement, so that we do not expect of the increase of the power consumption.
Right. So let me ask Mr. Galan, as renewables get to be a larger and larger scale, the grid has to be managed differently. Mr. Nakanishi is talking about that, or does it?
Absolutely. Blackout has already come for lack of power or for excess of power. So I think if you're managing well, you can already have blackout anytime. So for those which says that more renewable means less grid, is absolutely wrong. More renewable means more investment in grid. So you require more grid, but more intelligence in grid to be able to manage the loads and to manage the demand.
And as it's more distributed, does that increase the pressure?
More distributed means more means for managing all this energy. Right. Because if not, I think you can already have anytime problems of supply or problems with blackouts. I think the frequencies can already change, and already you have blackout rapidly. You are not already managing properly that one. So I think more renewable means more investment in grid. I think there are example of Hawaii. Hawaii have already made an extensive deployment of renewable distributed renewables. What happened? They have a tremendous problems of supply, and they require much more investment in grid to balance and to manage.
And
that
indeed,
one.
Hawaii is talking about needing to bring in LNG to help balance out manage the grid. So that's an area that Hitachi's focused on, is managing.
And also that Mr. Gallons pointed out, that's efficiency of the electric utility grid completely changed. The meaning completely changed. Used to be the huge power generator, how to distribute it, but this model is no more.
So let me, Hitachi, of course, is in nuclear. In fact, you're designing a new nuclear power plant for the United Kingdom. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, 2 nuclear power plants have come back into operation in Japan. Tell us what your view is, and maybe we'll then ask Fatih to say the role of nuclear, both in Japan and globally. Is nuclear part of the energy transformation for the future?
So first of all, that in Japan, so we have so many debates still, but now from the viewpoint of the technology and economical reasons, nuclear power is the most effective power sources and stable. And very much contiguous operations is impossible. This is a kind of the basic power source. So we cannot expect it of the rapid increase of the nuclear powers generating the powers. But now how to maintain it, how to safer, such a very stable power source. That's the very special power portfolios factor. That's we believe so that we would like to extent of this type of the nuclear technology which we learned a lot from the Fukushima to making a more safe operation. So we would like to extend this type of the technology development.
Right. Fatih, when you do the energy balances and talk about an energy transformation, where does nuclear fit in?
Nuclear still has an important role, but before that, Dan, you and Mr. Galan mentioned a point. I want to come to that briefly on renewables. Now, years and years, the discussion was, is renewables good or bad? Does it make sense or not? Is it economic or not? Now, I think when we look at the numbers, last year, half of the all new power plants come on stream were renewables. Other half, so 50% renewables, other 50% coal plus gas plus oil plus nuclear put together. So half of the all new installed capacity, 2015, were renewables. So first of all, renewables are not anymore a romantic story. It's a mainstream fuel, and this phase is over.
It's his big business.
Exactly. This phase is over. Second, bulk of the new installations do not come from Europe or United States. More than 2/3 of it come from the emerging countries. China, India, Brazil, and other countries. So in the past, it was Europe, US were the driving forces. Now the driving forces are the emerging countries. 3, in the past, renewables growth were driven by the hydropower. Now it is wind and solar. What does it mean? It means the following. Now the phase of the early years are over. Now the big challenge is how to integrate the renewables in the energy system. And this is a complex issue. This is not an easy issue. We, as the International Energy Agency, we are putting a lot of resources how to integrate the renewables in the energy system, because there are many challenges in terms of the resilience of the systems. Renewables are good, nice, but they come up with a lot of problems.
So Fatih, what you've said is the renewable age is, the romantic age in renewables is over.
Exactly.
But if you take the 1% of wind and solar and the 80%, go out 20 or 30 years, kind of where's the meeting point or the balance?
When we started with the Paris, when you look at the government submissions, the government targets, they are mainly based on increasing share of renewables and increasing energy efficiency. If we believe that the governments reach their targets, then we will see that more than 2/3 of the all new power plants will be renewables in the next 15 years, the new installations.
Right, but what will
but
be
still, the fossil fuels will be the dominating force.
Will still be
still dominating force
in how many years? In how many?
2030. If we want to
in 2030.
2030. If we want to reach the targets of Paris, which are tremendously strong targets, we not only push renewables and efficiency, but in my view, we have to put a ban on the inefficient, subcritical coal-fired power plants. So we have to do two things at the same time.
So
otherwise, it will be impossible to reach the targets.
So does the IEA have a number, 2040, 2050, what the balance between conventional and renewables?
What we have to see, if we want to reach the 2 degrees target, at least 40% of the energy needs to come from the zero-emission technologies, which includes, in addition to renewables, nuclear power.
So nuclear you see as part of the...
And currently, nuclear power is 72 power plants are under construction, but 40% are only in China.
Right.
China is the manufacturer of nuclear power, and as such, China is becoming, very soon, an exporter of nuclear technology, competing with Japan, with France, and other countries, because the cost of nuclear is going down. The more they do it, the lower the prices go, and they will make it much more accessible.
Right. So you mentioned in passing this phrase called natural gas.
Yes.
If you look at the United States, the way it brought down its emissions so dramatically was natural gas pushing coal out of the energy mix. Where does natural gas play its role, any of you, in the energy transformation?
I think natural gas can play a positive role if it replaces coal, like in the United States. If we see a big drop in the US today, emissions, almost 10 years low, driven by two things. One, the efficiency, and the second, gas replacing coal. But how it happened, two things. One, the gas prices are low. Second, there was a presidential decree in the United States, which had put difficulties for coal, as you know better than me, Dan, which is a tough subject in the United States.
I like it. Normally we say an executive order, but you called it a presidential decree, but it's actually the same thing. Mr. Lo, what's China's role going to be in the global renewable business? And where does this fit into all of the arguments around trade and tariffs and protection?
I think the role China is going to play, as we talk about solar. I think solar, China will play a leading role to continue to drive down the cost of products and systems. And in terms of renewable energy, I think China has a big ambition, which is President Xi announced in the United Nations Assembly last year. China is determined to build what we call global internet energy connections. Right? It's working with the China grid. So what that means for the global internet energy connections, it has three key elements. The one,
it's the global
internet energy connections, which the President Xi announced, and also the chairman of Chinese State Grid announced and several times. So there's three key elements for this mission to be played in the global energy or global renewable energy. Number one is renewable energy. Okay, that's the key elements. It's not going to be fossil fuel or conventional energy. Number two is what the Chinese call high voltage transmission lines. Okay, which started with regional and intercontinental, and eventually it's global. Number three is going to be smart grid solutions. Okay, not just for the microgrid, but also for the distributed generation. I think those kind of roles China is going to play. But in terms of the trade protections, I was heavily involved in the trade negotiation with China, US, and China.
And how's it going?
It's not going well. but we are here. We were in Dalian to talk about the collaboration and cooperation. We are here to talk about how we deploy the renewable energy in a global scale. Okay, I think the trade protections is not a win-win for either side. Okay, this is going to be global business, and it's going to be global missions. So personally, I'm strong against any kind of trade protections.
How much of the global market for solar panels is provided by China?
Roughly 65 to 70%.
65%.
65 to 70% as of today. But
and growing?
Chinese domestic manufacturing is stabilized, and the Chinese is expanding this manufacturing, what we call global manufacturing footprint repositioning, like in Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam. You saw Vietnam has built 4 gigawatt solar manufacturing last year.
Is there still overcapacity in China, or is that finished?
No, under the trade protectionism, probably still excess capacity in Chinese domestic manufacturing. But overall, if you include offshore manufacturing, like the Chinese they invest in Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand, I don't think it's really excess if you compare supply and demand.
4 gigawatts, how much, is any of that yours?
No, we are on 1.6 gigawatt. That's our solar asset.
Right.
We've become the largest private company investment in the solar farm project. Okay,
Right.
But in terms of monitoring, we are the global largest monitoring renewable energy companies. Our German subsidiary is called Meter Control. They are monitoring 40,000 systems and 16 gigawatt as of today.
When you say monitoring, what do you?
Monitoring the renewable energy generations. So, and we talk about how we work with the grid to balance those risks. I'll give you one example. Our German subsidiary Meter Control, they work with the German regulatory environment last April to forecast the solar eclipse. What is the renewable energy generation? So we provide our 45 minutes, 99% precise modeling about the solar generation during the solar eclipse, which happened last April.
Right.
So then the regulatory agencies will have enough time to prepare, to adjust, to adapt this natural
Right, and
phenomenon.
I presume they did a good job of forecasting?
Of course. So now we are working with the Chinese state grid companies to build a sophisticated modeling about renewable energy generation, wind and solar of China. And as you heard, China has power containment issues for renewable. One-time investment is power containment. So we're working. That's because no one has a good forecast model. That's related to our mission is how the digital, the data mining of the weather and our expertise in the weather-related data forecast can provide a sophisticated modeling for the renewable energy generation, which can mitigate the issues of the grid load.
So you have put on the table, and already Mr. Nakanishi did it, the question of the new digital technologies and capabilities that are needed as we move into a renewable area. Mr. Galan, you said big issue, carbon tax is needed.
Carbon price.
Carbon price, yes, carbon price, not a tax. There's a third thing out there, which is called batteries, storage. And I'd like to ask Mr. Nakanishi to say, what's the role of storage? How do you, as a technology company, see this, the battery, the state of battery research? Are we there? And Mr. Galan, you said you spent 15 years of your life designing batteries, so you can bring us up to date after Mr. Nakanishi.
Yeah. The cost of the battery is really, really high. That's the background why we cannot set up the more appropriate locations of the battery arrangement. But now the cost is getting the dynamically lowerings, and so that we can have the various different type of the storage the storage systems distributions. Also that I would like to point it out that the such kind of the power storage behavior is really suit to the highly distributed power sources. The solar or winds, those type of the renewables should be allocated in a more distributed way. It's just not like huge power generating stations. So that's more the cost-effective allocation of the battery is one of the very important field for the future stabilizing of the electric grid behavior. So we are now challenging of the capacity-wise of the more easy installations of the battery systems, but just a starting point right now, so that we should have a more dynamic usage of those types. Also, that the battery cost is fully related to the electric vehicles technology. Maybe the largest capacity of the battery will be consumed for the electric vehicles. Those of the automotive industry is a very the motive force for the developing of the technology and cost downs. So I'm very optimistic to set up the.
Is it something where you think there'll be one day we'll wake up and there'll be a breakthrough, or do you think it's a kind of evolutionary progress?
It's a very stepwise from the viewpoint of the cost, efficiencies.
So, Mr. Galan, as a battery designer,
I think that was 40 years ago when I started already my professional career. I started already as battery engineer, so yes. That was already a long, long time ago. But nevertheless, still I remind something of this. So the first thing, I think you mentioned something. As more intermittent or not predictable technology you have in the system, as more we need some kind of devices for storage, the energy in excess, and for providing energy when this demand appears. So what is already today the most efficient for the developed countries? Those countries we have already today just a grid, we have today already just already a demand in the different places. What is the most efficient manner? The most efficient manner of storing is pumping storage. Hydro pumping storage. I think if we transform...
Maybe just take another sentence, explain what it is.
So it's very simple. It's to use the dams, instead of producing in one single direction the generation, just taking the water from the top up to the bottom, is to take the water from the bottom to the top. Transform the generator in a motor. So in such a way that you can already generate in some time.
But you need a lot of hydro.
Well, you need a dam and you need two dams. So you have to play two dams.
And you need permission to build
I think I have to say, with Fatih, I think we have already talked about that. And I think he has a great idea. I already repeated your idea. I think it's today in Europe, in the existing hydropower plants, if you transform the existing power plant into reversible turbines which can already generate or can already pump in both directions. So you can store it massively, that one. Only one single power plant, I think we have already one of those we have in Spain. So only one is more than 1 million homes with their own batteries. So I think if we see how many batteries have to be established with one single power plant, you can already store it within one. With a cost much, much, much lower. It's 6-7 times cheaper than another system. But the second thing on this is something that he mentioned. And batteries, I'm sure then is going to be needed in due time. I'm no doubt. I'm sure then the economy have to be much more electrified. And transport is one of the areas we have to be much more electrified. And batteries have to play a role.
Do you see, do you put a time frame on not the pump storage, which is here and now, but the kind of batteries that you need for large-scale renewable?
Well,
is it 5 years away, 10 years away?
I think for large-scale renewable, you can already make this easily with pumping storage. I think in emerging countries, we have not grid. They have to make everything from zero. But in the country, we have already the grid, and you put already digitalization in the grid, and you put intelligence in the grid. You can move the load from one side to another one.
So you're not saying then that it's a gating obstacle that you need a new batteries?
No, I just saying that they cannot compete.
Right.
Today and for a long time with technologies which are by far more mature and more larger scale. It's the same thing with in the solar panels. There are good analysis made by MIT about what is better to use the solar panel in the centralized installation or distributed installation. And it's 80% cheaper centralized and distributed. So, which I think is obvious.
Why is distributed, though, much more popular with the public?
Well, I think in most cases just because of the regulation. Regulation is helping a lot of that one. I think you have already just a net, how you call?
Net metering?
Net balance, net balance or net metering. So I think you are not paying the grid. You are benefiting of the grid with paying nothing. Or even in some cases, you are already sending subsidies, very huge subsidies for that one, and you are not paying the grid. So I think they are, let's say, in artificial competition.
So let me ask you a question before we open it up to conversation. Do you think that 5 years from now, a lot of the focus will be not just on renewables versus conventional, but distributed versus grid?
No, I don't think so. I think both are needed. I think the world will need more and more clean energy. So distributed energy has already, they will play their role, and it will be needed in certain areas, certain places, no doubt. And batteries can be used in certain areas, in certain places, no doubt. Concentrated energy will be needed in certain places, for certain purposes. Pumping and storage have to play their role. All they have their own role. I think one is going to substitute another one. Both is going to be needed. Solar is going to be needed centralized, and solar will be needed already distributed. Wind will be already larger scale wind farm as is today, onshore and offshore, both will be needed. So I think according with your numbers, the demand in the next 25 years in electricity in the world is going to increase by 80% if we would like to achieve the targets of decarbonization. So 80% increase in demand means everything will be needed. The point is to use that one, and that is the report we are producing this year here in our group in Davos, is precisely to make, not to repeat the mistake we have already made someone, is to make the things in a manner will be competitive in a way that will be not needed just any kind of subsidy.
So I'm going to open up, but I'm going to just have to ask Fadi one last question before we do, which is just to go back to oil. Is it normally 2 years ago, 3 years ago, people would have said a cut in oil prices great for the world economy. It doesn't necessarily look so great now. Why is that?
I think it is. It depends on who you are. For some, it's a good news. For some, it's a bad news.
But it turns out it's more of a bad news for more people than it appeared.
Exactly. So, for example, for Middle East.
We know the Middle East.
Middle East, I tell you one number. If the oil prices remain around $30, 2016, an equivalent of 20% of the Middle East GDP will be raised. It's a big thing. For Russia, about 10% equivalent of Russian GDP will be raised in 2016 if the prices remain at this level. But at the same time, for Europe, for China, for India, it's an economic stimulus.
But is it? But not as much. I mean, if you look at the global financial markets, something is happening there.
It would have been, I think, worse if we were in this financial situation with higher oil price. It provided support there. But then,
so are two different things going on at the
exactly.
same
And but two things. One, as I mentioned, this low oil prices translating in the very low, unprecedented low oil investments mean we are also having a fertile ground in the future, strong rebound of the prices.
Right,
This
as
is
you
one.
said before.
Second, the topic of our discussion, transformation of energy. I think low energy prices are complicating that transformation. So we have to also put this in a context, and therefore there is a need for governments to be very awake in the presence of the low oil prices if they are serious about Paris.
So what should they do?
I think they should, if they have regulations, if they have new policies, they have to stick to them. They shouldn't get relaxed because the energy prices are low. They don't have the impetus of saving money.
So you mean more presidential decrees?
Or executive orders.
Right. Okay, let's open it up. I can't see everybody, but short questions from the floor, right there. Everything has to be tight.
Hi, Anirudh from Carbon Clean Solutions.
Just identify yourself.
Anirudh from Carbon Clean Solutions. The question is, a major part of energy transformation is industry. How do you see industry using energy transforming over a period of time? Number one. Number two, do you think carbon capture and reuse storage has a part to play in it? Thank you.
Okay, let's get a couple more questions.
Hi, Jürgen Grossman. I used to be with a big energy producer, but now I'm just an energy consumer. Now, what you're telling me here is a great future, of course, but when I look at the forwards in the European Power Exchange now, in 3 years, 4 years, electricity will cost, what, 25 euros per megawatt hour, which is very low. Now, how do you judge, how do you justify all that new investment into storage and so on, when the existing system still provides such cheap power that really no economic justification can be made for any of those investments?
Okay, one more question, then we'll go right there.
My name is Komo Daman. I'm the chairman of one of the largest shipyards in the world. I wonder. I would like to have a comment on one of the members of this forum on the future of tidal energy. You didn't mention that.
Right. Okay. So the question is, what is industry doing about carbon and changing its energy mix, which maybe is a question for you, Mr. Nakanishi. How do you justify these new investments when electricity is cheap? And what about tidal power? So do you want to take the industrial question?
From the viewpoint of the manufacturing industry, the total environment of the business are changed. So not simply of the power generating or switches or transformer. So those kind of the equipment producing is not a major part of our business. It's how to set up the generation of the total system is one of their targets. That's from the viewpoint of providers. But now simultaneously, the electric utility operation also changing very dynamically. That already Mr. Garland explained of the source of that, but it's a very small part of that. Mr. Ruo also talked about the China's great experiment for how to, the world's largest electric grid, the state grid is taking a strong initiative, set up the various technology combined. That cannot be seen in the other world. So really, what I want to say, that's a very dynamic change of the total environment. That's the recognition of this stage.
Right. So the question about how do you justify these investments in new power when the power cost looks like it's going to be pretty low?
Well, I think that is, Jürgen, that is precisely what is happening in Britain. So I think you are just making a very good example. So Britain is a country which has already, the reserve margin is very low. So they are already, the prices are not very attractive. And no one is making already new investment unless they are already somebody, means through a regulated means, just already providing and guaranteeing certain level of price. So I think it's been made investment, it's going to be made investment in nuclear with a guaranteed price. It are being made investment in renewable, onshore and offshore, with a guaranteed price, but it's not been made, no one in coal power plants or in a combined cycle of gas or whatever another one, which are already just market only with the market prices. Right. So I think even they are already making some kind of bids for those ones. The price which are being achieved for those bids for giving already certain capacity payments are not big enough for justifying already new power plants.
Right. Do you want to add anything?
Yes, I think that's it's a great question, but really depends on the region. The renewable energy, the structure has a huge difference between region and regions. I think for the European and for the US, okay, I think keeping in mind a couple of things. One is the efficiency is going up. The capex for the project investment is coming down dramatically. As I predict for the next 5 years, it's going to be 25 to 35% down. Okay, then also the interest rate is being very stable in the low range. So if you add all that, and I think the European and the US, I think people will continue to invest in this distributed generation. But for some other regions like Southeast Asia or the Ocean Island countries, those areas, because I've been to Nepal, Cambodia, Indonesia a lot. If you go there, okay, if you go to Nepal, every single commercial facility has the diesel-powered backup, right? You stay 5-star hotel, you always see the kickback between the grid and the diesel backup engines, right? So if you see those areas, I think electricity, I don't see any chance they can come down. I was in Cambodia last month. More than 90% of the village people, they don't have access to the power, but at the city, it's 25 US cents kilowatt hour. They say the rich people can afford to pay. In those areas, I think with the system coming down, the capex, I think it's way justified the new investment for even the cost is low.
So who wants to take tidal power?
May I just say something on Europe? Just one line.
If you do, then you also have to take tidal power.
Okay, this is bad luck. So this is now for Europe. I completely agree with Herr Grossman. Now I think there is a need for to reform the European electricity markets. This is otherwise it is not an investable market. You talk about gas, then look, European gas use today, as of this year, is 20% lower than 2008. So this is amazing. So this gives us an idea where the European gas markets go. And when you look at the prices, I don't know who would make an investment just based on the market conditions. So this is number one. Number two, on tidal, this is a technology which is trying to find a niche in the electricity markets. There are encouraging developments in different countries, including Australia, New Zealand, and some European countries. But once again, the new technologies, the technologies who don't have a strong penetration power now need government support. And this low energy prices complicates that support. Therefore, I wouldn't think that the tidal power, the ocean power, will make a major improvement in the next years to come.
So I saw one question over here. Are there some right here? And are there some others back here? Anybody? He needs a mic, please. Okay.
John Mogg. I'm chair of the Council for the Future of Energy for the World Forum, but I'm also former GB energy regulator and currently the chair of the Board of Regulators for the Energy Agency in Europe. And I don't speak purely as an energy regulator, but I'm very interested, given the importance of stability, predictability in terms of a regime, what threat there is in terms of investment, future investment, particularly of the sorts of size that have been mentioned, with the threats of political intervention and threats to the independence of energy regulators around the world.
By political intervention, what do you mean?
I mean
be explicit.
Well, I can be. In some countries, within Europe, some countries have replaced their energy regulator some 10 or 12 times during the course of the year because of unpopular decisions. Around the world, there are instances where governments are taking a much greater role in terms of regulating energy companies, but also in terms of defining the investment conditions which discourage investment, particularly in renewable energy.
Oh, by discouraging, you mean by pushing in lower prices than regulators want? Or?
Well, by having regulated prices, which are usually low prices,
right.
Or by setting rules that are too difficult, or by protecting incumbents.
Okay. And over there, our friend from Tokyo Gas.
Muraki of Tokyo Gas, and you're talking about the renewables grid system, and I think it's the smart grid and smart storage technologies are important to utilize renewables efficiently. However, one of the obstacles to utilize the renewables in the global basis is the distance between the area of intensive solar energies and wind energies and demand side. So to transport those renewables by grid system doesn't make sense. So there could be the carriers, energy carriers, like convert to the hydrogen, convert to the chemicals or ammonia or something else, and transport to the demand side. That could be the one of areas the global industry need to explore. Anybody comment on that?
So is there one more question? If I don't see any other, then we'll go to that. On the regulators, I guess it's this side of the room should.
And the most
We
regulated
defend the
or we.
I think we want some defensive regulators.
No, well, I think something that John Moore is already mentioning is true. The level of increased intervention in very many countries to reduce the independence of the regulators is something which is happening. So, and that is not a good sign for already incentivizing the investment. We investors, we prefer a professional independent regulator better than a government, whatever it should be, with the established rules, but they can change the rules anytime they would like. And the fact, in many cases, the rules in certain countries has been changed even after the investment has been made. With that is not giving precisely already the certainty with investment we require long-term maturity needs. So I think I fully subscribe the point that he mentioned, and I think European Commission is already moving forward this direction. So the Vice President of for the European Energy Union is already working precisely in that one, just trying to make a level playing field and just to avoiding the intervention of the countries, of the government, the countries can really change the rules, whatever they would like. I think that is something which we have to be aware. In the documents we are already producing here at the World Economic Forum last year, so we are saying that that is something we have to be already just minimize this intervention.
Right.
Let me add something on this. I mean, just one, I completely agree. But in terms of renewables, coming back to our discussion here, I think the changing policies, changing regulators is a killer. And people talk about the main challenge in front of the renewables is the unpredictability. But I think bigger challenge is not the unpredictability of renewables, but the unpredictability of the policies on renewables. So I just wanted to say that.
I fully agree.
So, right, fluctuations. We'll try and get the metaphor right, but exactly. Mr. Meraki raised the question about the distance between the generation sites and the load centers, and how to mediate them, and what type of technology. Obviously, one is the grids that you described, ultra high. But do you all want to just take that question?
Yeah, it's very much a complicated environment issues. In the case of the Europe, really not easy to connect of the northern part to wind power to the southern part. That's not simply economical reasons. It's a kind of the natural reserve. So those the conditions to be considered. And but now in the case of the China is really the setting up the HVDC to connect of the directly is one of the maybe from the viewpoint of the economy, that's the wisest way to set up that. Is it possible or not? So of course, some of the chemical conversions of the energy to some of the ammonia or hydro, those kinds of technology also that some area is a just fit. So that today's discussion is we need a very diversified energy source as a future, our future, and also that some of the transportation or electric management schemes is also that diverse way to be adapt. Setting up the various future possibility.
So, Mr. Nakanishi, one thing we haven't talked about are fuel cells. That's a subject of great interest in Japan. Does Hitachi have a view on the future of the fuel cell in this mix?
Oh yes, of course. The fuels are the strongest driver is not so clear yet. From the pure energy side, and also that I'm already talking about batteries fully dependent on the automotive area. But simultaneously, the fuel, the battery is one of the important technology. So in this case, also that the very much of diversified technology development is required.
I think at the point of transportation, I think it's true. Then for long distance, I think we have to look for the most efficient manner. But I think it's already been used, especially in the offshore wind farms. It's already high voltage DC as a mean which is more efficient, less costly, and with less losses than another system with AC. So which I think is something which is solutions which are efficient, especially for big powers. I think you cannot use these sort of things for making a small installation. You have to make already a critical mass which justify the transmission. But when you have a critical mass, I think it's able to be made, and today it's been made in most of the offshore wind farms that we are already investing in the North Sea. So I think it's a solution which is already economically efficient, that one more than another solution of storage.
So overall, we are seeing a clear shifting globally from the large-scale utility to the distributed generation, the solar business. Even in China, 2016, they set up a target. The distributed generation is the first time is going to overtake, the percentage-wise, overtake the large-scale utilities.
The percentage of?
It's 65% of those 35%. The 35% of 2016, we have the largest scale utility, and 65% of the installation we have deployed at the distribution level, distributed generation level. Okay, so for Southeast Asia, I see clearly the distributed generation combined with the low cost storage is the only solution. It's apparently they're not going to build the high voltage transmission area, particularly for the island oceans.
Right. Yeah. So today I want to emphasize of the the more complicated solutions required to set up the energy. That's one of the big difference from the conventional issues. How to combine of the various power source, how to manage of the consumer side. Such a very much systematic approach is one of the big the challenge of the digital technology. But now the setting up those total system is very much a political issues, and so we need to have a very share of such kind of the future steps for the making an improvement of this total systems.
Right.
So I think in this point something which he insisted before, and I would like to insist. I think demand, according to your estimate, in the next 25 years, the demand of electricity is increasing by 80%. So means all solution, all technology will be needed if we would like to supply what the world will demand. Still, there are 1,200 million people without access to electricity. That's why when you mentioned these countries. Right. So all solution will be needed, all technology will be needed. It's not one against another. All will be needed. Using in the different places. In the developed countries, we have to use one technology or one system. In the developed countries, another one. But all will be needed. In no, we will not already be able to provide the electricity the world will require.
Right. So let me thank the panelists for a very good discussion, a very timely discussion that was made so relevant by the events in Paris of a month ago. And I think that Paris has obviously has been transforming in putting the issue of transformation of the energy system on the agenda. And I think in this discussion, we've illuminated many aspects of it, and thank the panelists and thank those for the questions and those who have joined us on the web. I think one conclusion that comes from it is, while the word transformation is a single word, it's a word with many, many moving parts. One of the things that we've come away from it with is that there's a need for a lot of technologies to connect these moving parts as the scale increases. But it's a story both of moving parts, but at the same point, it has a lot of embedded parts and a lot of embedded history, which will make this a very complex transformation as we move forward. And I thank you all for this discussion today. Thanks.
Thank you.